Ready for a deep dive into some seriously mind-bending ideas?
Oh, yeah, bring it on.
Today, we're going to be exploring the teachings of Sri Ramana Maharshi,
Okay.
a revered Indian sage,
hmm
using excerpts from the book Be As You Are.
Okay.
So imagine discovering that your true self isn't your body,
Okay.
your
Yep.
thoughts,
Mhm.
your emotions,
Yeah.
but something much, much deeper.
That's a good one to explore.
That's the heart of what we're exploring today.
I like it.
Ramana Maharshi's teachings really resonate with a lot of people
Yeah.
because they point to something we all experience,
Mm-hmm.
this beingness,
Yeah.
but rarely understand fully. It's like we're aware of being aware,
Right.
but we don't necessarily grasp what that means.
That's the mystery, isn't it?
So who was this guy who had such profound insights?
Yeah, who was he?
Our source material describes Ramana Maharshi's life as anything but ordinary.
Oh, interesting.
So he was just a schoolboy,
Okay.
only 16 years old, when he had this incredibly intense experience of realizing his true nature.
Mm-hmm.
It was so profound that he became completely detached from his body and the world around him for years.
Seriously.
There are accounts of insects chewing on him,
Oh, my God.
and he was barely eating anything.
Wow.
It's hard to believe that's even possible.
That's pretty wild.
So how did this experience shape his life?
Yeah, what happened?
So this profound shift in consciousness drew followers,
I bet.
and eventually he became known as Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi,
Okay.
a spiritual teacher deeply revered for his wisdom.
Oh, wow.
He lived a simple life
Okay.
near the sacred mountain Arunachala in South India,
Yep.
teaching until his death in 1950.
Mm-hmm.
That's an incredible story.
Yeah.
But what exactly did he teach?
Yeah, what was the message?
What was the core of his message?
Yeah.
Ramana Maharshi taught that there's a single, unchanging reality underlying everything.
Okay.
He called this the self.
The self, okay.
And it's not separate from you.
Interesting.
It is you. The problem is most of us are totally unaware of it.
Right.
We mistake our bodies and minds for our true selves.
Yeah,
So we're kind of missing the forest for the trees.
you could say that. Yeah.
The self, according to Ramana Maharshi, is pure consciousness or awareness.
Okay.
That sense of simply being,
Mm-hmm.
it's always there. The
Yeah.
constant factor in all of our experiences,
Yeah.
like a silent observer
Yeah.
behind the ever-changing show of our thoughts,
Okay.
emotions, and sensations.
Yeah, I like that, a silent observer.
That makes sense, but it's still a bit abstract.
It is.
How did he suggest people connect with this deeper self?
Yeah, how do you do that?
He actually emphasized the role of the mind in obscuring our true nature,
Okay.
specifically the ego, which he called the I thought.
I got.
What role does the ego play in our understanding of the self?
Yeah.
Well, the ego is a mental construct that constantly arises and falls,
Okay.
creating the illusion that we're separate from everything else.
Okay.
It clings to the body, thoughts and experiences,
Okay.
leading to suffering because it makes us feel limited and incomplete.
Right.
So if we're constantly identifying with these fleeting thoughts and experiences,
Hmm.
it's no wonder we feel disconnected from a deeper sense of self.
Makes sense.
Exactly. And that's where Ramana Maharshi's method of self-inquiry comes in.
Oh, interesting.
It's a practice of persistently questioning, who am I?
Okay.
Not to come up with an intellectual answer,
Right.
but to trace that I thought back to its source,
Mm-hmm.
revealing the unchanging reality of the self.
Okay.
So it's more about shifting our attention inward
Yeah.
and observing the nature of our own being.
Exactly.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He describes self-inquiry as shining a light on a shadow.
Okay.
The more we focus on that I thought, the
Uh-huh.
more we see it for what it is, an illusion.
I see.
This raises an interesting question.
Okay.
If we're trying to dissolve the ego through self-inquiry,
Mm-hmm.
does that mean getting rid of the sense of I altogether?
That's a good question.
That's a common misconception.
Oh, is it?
Ramana Maharshi wasn't suggesting we annihilate the sense of I completely.
Okay.
It remains,
Okay.
but it's no longer seen as limited or defined by the mind and body.
Okay.
Imagine the I shifting from being this small, separate self
Mhm.
to something much vaster
Mm-hmm.
and interconnected with everything around you.
Interesting.
That sounds like a pretty radical shift in perspective.
It does.
But is it really possible to just sit there and question, who am I? And have some life-altering realization?
Yeah, it's like that, huh?
For most of us, it's not that simple.
Probably not.
Ramana Maharshi emphasized the importance of surrender as a crucial aspect of this path.
Surrender.
But he wasn't talking about weakness or giving up.
Oh, so what did he mean?
So what did he mean by surrender?
Yeah.
He saw surrender as a powerful act
Okay.
of recognizing the limitations of the ego and surrendering control to something larger,
Okay.
to the true self. It's about recognizing that you're not in control of everything
Right.
and allowing yourself to let go of that constant need to control your thoughts,
Yeah.
emotions, and experiences.
I like that.
It sounds like letting go of that tight grip on who we think we are
Yeah.
is key to accessing this deeper self.
Right.
But how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
It seems like a pretty tall order.
It does.
This is where the practice of self-inquiry gets even deeper.
Okay.
By surrendering, we dissolve the ego's resistance to recognizing its true nature. Think about it.
Okay.
The ego wants to stay in control,
Right.
but surrender allows us to let go of that control and open ourselves to a new way of being. So we're talking about a fundamental shift in how we relate to ourselves and the world around us.
Yeah, that's big.
Exactly. And this is where the role of a guru or spiritual teacher comes into play.
Okay, the guru.
While self-inquiry can be a solitary practice, Ramana Maharshi saw the guidance of a guru as incredibly valuable. So a guru acts as a sort of guide on this journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
What exactly does that look like?
Yeah, what does it look like?
A guru can point us in the right direction, offering teachings and support, but ultimately the real work happens internally.
Yeah.
Ramana Maharshi was very clear that the true guru is the self within.
Oh, wow.
It's like having a mentor who helps you to develop the skills to explore your own inner landscape.
Okay.
But ultimately, you're the one doing the exploring.
Right.
That's a great analogy.
I like that.
Ramana Maharshi also highlighted the importance of what he called satsanga,
Satsanga.
which means association with truth.
Okay. Association with truth.
What did he mean by association with truth? Is he
Yeah.
talking about spending time with wise people? It's about connecting with truth in various forms,
Okay.
whether it's through being in the presence of a realized being, contemplating their teachings, or simply focusing attention inward.
I see.
It's about surrounding yourself with things that resonate with truth
Yeah.
and help you stay connected to that deeper reality.
Okay, so like an environment.
So it's like creating an environment that supports your journey of self-discovery,
Right.
whether it's through connecting with like-minded individuals, reading inspiring books,
Okay.
or simply spending time in nature. Exactly.
Yeah.
And Ramana Maharshi believed that this kind of environment can be a powerful support system
I bet.
as you explore these deeper aspects of yourself.
Okay.
This is all fascinating,
It is.
but it raises an interesting question.
Okay. What's that?
What about the world around us?
Yeah.
Where does that fit into all of this talk about the self?
Good question.
That's where Ramana Maharshi's teachings get even more mind-bending.
Uh-oh.
He offered different perspectives on the reality of the world,
Okay.
acknowledging various philosophical viewpoints
Right.
to meet people where they were. So he didn't insist on everyone adopting one specific view of reality.
So flexible.
Not at all.
Okay.
He was incredibly adaptable,
Yeah.
recognizing that people come to these ideas with different backgrounds and beliefs.
Right.
Sometimes he suggested the world is a projection of the mind,
Okay.
like a dream,
A dream.
ultimately unreal from the standpoint of the self.
Oh, wow.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Are we saying the world is an illusion?
Wow.
He presented it as one perspective among many,
Okay.
particularly for those who found it helpful in their practice.
Mm-hmm.
If the world is seen as a dream,
Okay.
it can help us to detach from its allure
Right.
and focus on the true self.
Right.
I can see how that perspective might help us loosen our grip
Yeah.
on the idea that the world is solid and unchanging,
Okay.
and that our happiness depends on external circumstances.
Right.
Right? It allows us to see the world and our experiences with more spaciousness and less attachment.
Makes sense.
But didn't he also talk about karma and reincarnation?
He did.
How do those concepts fit in with this idea of the world as a dream?
Yeah, that's a good question.
He spoke about karma and reincarnation
Okay.
as realities within the realm of ignorance,
Mm-hmm.
but suggested that they ultimately dissolve upon self-realization.
Interesting.
So by realizing the self,
Yeah.
we transcend these limitations and see things from a completely different perspective.
Wow.
But how does this relate to our experience of suffering?
Yeah.
Think about it this way.
Okay.
By realizing the self,
Uh-huh.
We transcend suffering,
Okay.
recognizing it as a product of the ego's misidentification
Right.
with the world and its dramas.
Right.
So we're not trying to escape the world,
Yeah.
but rather to see it from a completely different vantage point.
Okay.
A vantage point that's free from the limitations of the ego.
That's powerful.
Precisely, it's about shifting from a limited, ego-driven perspective to the vastness of the self,
Yeah.
where suffering no longer has the same hold on us.
Wow.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground here already.
We have.
It's like we've taken a whirlwind tour of Ramana Maharshi's teachings,
Yeah?
from the nature of the self to self-inquiry,
Right.
surrender,
Okay.
and even these mind-bending perspectives on the world.
Yeah.
And we've only just begun.
There's more.
There's so much more to explore, but what's truly remarkable is that all of this points back to one fundamental truth.
What's that?
Our true nature is not limited to our body and mind.
Okay.
We are the self, pure awareness, always present,
Right.
even if we're not aware of it.
Powerful stuff.
This has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
So for our listener, I think we should leave you with a question to contemplate.
Okay. I like it.
If you're not just your thoughts and experiences,
Right.
who are you really?
That's the question.
It's a question that invites us all to go inward and explore the depths of our own being and to discover for ourselves the truth of Ramana Maharshi's teachings.
I love it. And, exploring Ramana Maharshi's teachings, it's like peeling back layers of an onion.
Oh, okay.
The more we understand, the more we realize there's still more to discover.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
And speaking of peeling back layers, our source material also touches on specific techniques that Ramana Maharshi recommended,
Okay.
like meditation and using mantras.
Right.
Can you talk a bit more about those?
Sure. So he was never rigid about any one technique,
Okay.
but he did offer insights into how these practices could support the path to self-realization.
Okay, let's start with meditation.
Okay.
It's become so mainstream these days.
Yeah, it has.
What was Ramana Maharshi's perspective on it?
Well, he often defined meditation as concentrating on a single thought to the exclusion of all others. Think of it like stilling the mind,
Okay.
creating a space for the self to shine through.
So it's not about emptying the mind completely,
Right.
which always seems impossible to me,
Yeah.
but about focusing it intensely?
Yes, exactly like a laser beam.
Okay.
And he stressed that the concentration should be directed toward the heart.
Okay. Not the head.
When you say the heart,
Yeah.
is he talking about the physical heart?
Oh, no.
I'm a little confused.
Yeah, he's actually referring to the spiritual heart,
Okay.
the core of our being, often considered the seat of consciousness.
Okay.
It's that place within
Uh-huh.
where the sense of I originates.
This idea of meditating on the heart is fascinating.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on what that means?
Sure.
How does it help us connect with the source of our being?
So Ramana Maharshi taught
Okay.
that this type of meditation can lead to a profound sense of peace
Okay.
and clarity by turning inward.
Okay.
We connect with that unchanging source of awareness, that stillness that underlies all experience.
But what about those times when our minds just won't settle down?
Oh, yeah.
I know. It seems like my thoughts are always popping up like popcorn.
That's common.
Any advice for those moments?
He acknowledged that it's a very common experience, especially for those new to meditation.
Right.
He advised against straining or forcing the mind to be still.
Okay.
Instead, he suggested gently redirecting the attention back to the object of meditation each time it wanders.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's more about gentle guidance than brute force.
Right.
What about mantras?
Okay.
They always seem a bit mysterious to me.
They are kind of.
What's the deal with those?
Well, mantras are sacred syllables or phrases
Okay.
repeated to evoke spiritual energies and connect with the divine.
Okay.
Ramana Maharshi acknowledged their power,
All right.
but he emphasized understanding their meaning, not just mechanically repeating them.
So it's about engaging with a mantra on a deeper level,
Yeah.
not just using it as a kind of mental chant.
Exactly, he explained.
Okay.
That when a mantra becomes mental, it turns into contemplation, a state of really focused awareness.
Do you need a special initiation or something to use mantras effectively?
Or can anyone use them?
Ramana Maharshi didn't believe in rigid rules.
Okay.
In fact, he shared a story
Oh, a story.
about a king
Okay.
who learned the Gayatri mantra from someone other than his guru. and wanted to know if he was reciting it correctly.
Okay.
The guru, in a clever demonstration,
showed
the king that it's not just about the words, but about the authority behind them.
I'm curious, what was the demonstration?
So the guru asked the king to write the mantra down.
Okay.
And place it under a pot. He then told the king to place another pot over a piece of paper containing the king's own signature.
Interesting.
When the guru chanted the mantra, only the pot with the king's signature moved.
Oh, wow.
Showing that true power comes not from the words themselves, but from the authority behind them.
That's a fascinating story.
It is.
It highlights the idea that there's more to spiritual practices than meets the eye.
Yes, and Ramana Maharshi emphasized that the true guru is the self within. An external guru can guide us, but ultimately the real transformation happens through our own inner connection.
Okay, so we've talked about meditation and mantras as tools to help us on the path to self-realization. But what about our lives in the world? Does all this spiritual stuff mean we have to renounce everything and become hermits?
That's a question that many people grapple with.
It is.
Fortunately, Ramana Maharshi offered guidance on how to live a spiritual life while still engaging in the world. He didn't believe that renunciation meant physically withdrawing from society.
So it's not about running away from the world?
No.
Shutting yourself off from everything?
Not at all. He taught that true renunciation is about giving up the false self, the ego, which is what creates this sense of separation and attachment.
I see. So it's about changing our internal relationship to the world, rather than changing our external circumstances.
Exactly. It's about engaging in activities with detachment, without identifying ourselves as the doer.
Okay, but how do you actually do that?
Yeah, that's the question.
It seems really difficult. How do you live in the world without getting caught up in the endless doing all the demands of work, family, and everything else?
So Ramana Maharshi emphasized remembering our true nature, even amidst the busyness of life. He said if we can stay connected to the self, even while engaged in activities, those activities won't bind us in the same way.
It's like we can be in the world, but not of it.
Yes, precisely. It's about finding that balance, that harmony between our inner and outer lives.
It seems like it would be easy to lose sight of that inner connection.
It can be.
Especially when things get chaotic. How do we stay grounded in the self when life throws us curveballs?
Well, Ramana Maharshi taught that everything happens according to destiny. He believed that the only true freedom we have is to turn our minds inward and renounce the mental activities that create suffering.
So it's about accepting what is. And focusing on what we can control. Our own inner state.
Exactly. It's not about being passive. But about recognizing that our true power lies in aligning with the self. Not in trying to manipulate the world around us.
This is all incredibly liberating.
It is.
But I wonder, is there a danger of becoming detached from the world and the people around us? If we're not as invested in outcomes, will we lose our sense of connection and compassion?
That's a great question. And it's something that Ramana Maharshi addressed directly.
He did.
He emphasized that realizing the self doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. In fact, he believed it leads to a much deeper sense of compassion and connection.
So it's not about shrinking our circle of compassion, but about expanding it.
Yes, he taught that by realizing the self. We see the interconnectedness of all things. We no longer see ourselves as separate from others. And this naturally leads to a desire to alleviate suffering.
That's a beautiful idea.
It is.
Seeing the world through the eyes of unity. Recognizing that we're all connected on a deeper level.
That's the essence of it. It's about moving beyond the ego's limited perspective. And embracing a wider view that encompasses all beings.
This has been a really enlightening conversation.
It has.
We've talked about meditation, mantras, and the idea of living in the world without attachment. But what about those more mystical experiences that some spiritual seekers report? Things like visions, psychic powers, out-of-body experiences.
Interesting.
Where do those fit in?
Ramana Maharshi acknowledged these experiences. But he didn't consider them essential to self-realization.
So it's not about chasing after supernatural experiences.
Not at all, he believed.
Okay.
The true spiritual growth is about realizing the self, not acquiring special powers.
Right.
Remember, he himself had extraordinary experiences like that profound shift in consciousness as a teenager. But he didn't dwell on them.
Okay.
Or encourage others to seek them.
He seems to have been saying, don't get caught up in the fireworks.
Right.
The real show is happening within.
Exactly. He was pointing to a truth that's deeper than any fleeting experience. A truth that's always accessible to us if we know where to look.
And it sounds like that where to look is inward, not outward.
Precisely. It's about turning our attention away from the external world. And focusing on the source of awareness, the self that's always present within.
One of the things I find so compelling about Ramana Maharshi is his approach to spiritual questions. He seemed to approach everything with such flexibility and openness. He didn't shy away from discussing different perspectives, even those that might have contradicted his own views. What was that all about?
That's what makes him such a remarkable teacher.
Yeah.
He was a master of meeting people where they were. He recognized that there are many paths to truth. And he didn't insist on everyone following his way.
So it was more about guiding people toward their own understanding rather than imposing a rigid belief system.
Exactly. He saw himself as a facilitator. Not a dictator. He offered teachings and guidance. But he left it up to individuals to find their own way.
It's like he was saying, here are some tools and maps. But ultimately, you have to explore the terrain for yourself.
That's a perfect analogy.
I like that.
He trusted in people's innate capacity to discover truth. And he encouraged them to question, to explore, and ultimately to find their own way back to the self.
This has been such a rich and insightful exploration of Ramana Maharshi's teachings.
It has.
We've covered so much ground. From the nature of the self to the practices of self-inquiry, meditation, and the use of mantras. We've discussed the challenges of living in the world without attachment. And the importance of surrendering to the self. And we've even touched on some of the more mystical aspects of spiritual experience, like visions and psychic powers. Always remembering Ramana Maharshi's emphasis on keeping our focus on the ultimate goal. Self-realization.
Self-realization.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, there's one question that's been swirling in my mind.
Oh, what's that?
What about the idea of God?
God.
Where does that fit into all of this? Did Ramana Maharshi believe in God?
That's a question a lot of people have.
I bet.
And it's one that Ramana Maharshi addressed in different ways throughout his teachings. Sometimes he used the terms God and self interchangeably, suggesting they are ultimately one and the same.
So God isn't some separate being out there, but rather the very ground of our being.
That's one way to understand it. He often emphasized the immanence of God, suggesting that God is present within each of us as the self.
So it's not about believing in a God outside of ourselves, but about realizing that divine presence within.
Yes, and he pointed to this truth through various teachings and practices. For example, he often encouraged people to contemplate this statement, I am that I am, which he saw as a powerful affirmation of our true nature, as the self or God.
It's like he was saying, the divine is closer than you think. It's not something to search for, but something to realize.
Exactly. He wasn't interested in promoting dogma or blind faith. He wanted people to experience the truth for themselves, to awaken to the reality of their own being.
But what about those who find comfort in the idea of a personal God? Someone they can pray to, someone who watches over them? How does that fit in?
Ramana Maharshi understood that need. He didn't discourage devotion or prayer. In fact, he acknowledged that for some people, connecting with a personal God can be a stepping stone to self-realization.
It sounds like he was really skilled at meeting people where they were on their spiritual journeys and offering guidance that resonated with their individual needs and beliefs.
Yes. And he often emphasized that ultimately all paths lead to the same goal, realizing the self.
It's like all roads lead to Rome.
Yeah.
Even though they might take different routes.
Exactly. He recognized the diversity of human experience.
Okay.
And offered teachings that could accommodate a wide range of beliefs and perspectives.
We've covered so much in this deep dive already.
We have.
We've explored Ramana Maharshi's teachings on the self-inquiry, meditation, mantras, living in the world without attachment, and even the nature of God.
Yeah.
This has been incredibly enriching.
It has been.
But I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
And that's the beauty of Ramana Maharshi's teachings.
Right.
There's always more to discover, to contemplate, to experience.
Right.
It's a lifelong journey of exploration and discovery.
So for our listener, we encourage you to continue this exploration, delve deeper into the teachings of Ramana Maharshi.
Okay.
Experiment with the practices he recommended.
Yeah.
And see what resonates with you.
Yeah. Find what works for you.
And remember, as we've been exploring today, the truth you're seeking might be closer than you think.
And might.
It's not something to be found outside of yourself.
Right.
But something to be realized within.
I like that.
It's amazing how these teachings seem to spiral inward. The more we explore, the more we realize there's always another layer to uncover.
That's true.
And that's the beauty of this journey, isn't it?
It is.
It's a process of continuous unfolding.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking of journeys,
Okay.
I think it's time to address the concepts of karma, destiny, and free will.
Right.
These are pretty weighty topics.
They are.
And I'm curious to hear how Ramana Maharshi approached them.
Yeah, me too.
He certainly didn't shy away from these big questions.
No, he did.
And he offered some really thought-provoking insights into how these concepts relate to the path of self-realization.
I'm ready.
Let's start with karma.
Okay, karma.
Most people have at least a vague understanding of what that means, right?
Yeah, I think so.
It's like the cosmic law of cause and effect.
Right. What goes around comes around.
What goes around comes around.
Exactly as you sow, so shall you reap.
Ramana Maharshi acknowledged the validity of karma,
Okay.
but he also pointed out that it operates within the realm of ignorance, the illusion of separation from the self.
So if we're caught up in the illusion of a separate self, we're bound by the laws of karma.
He suggested that at the level of the ego,
Okay.
we experience the consequences of our actions, both good and bad. He even talked about how every action and experience in a person's life is determined at birth.
Wait, so it's all predetermined? Does that mean we don't have any free will?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Ramana Maharshi suggested that our only true freedom lies in realizing there is no separate self acting.
Whoa.
So it's not about changing our outer circumstances, but about shifting our inner perspective.
I see.
Precisely, it's about waking up from the dream of a separate self, the ego, which he saw as the root of suffering.
Okay.
If we realize the self, do we transcend the laws of karma altogether?
That's what he taught.
Wow.
When we realize our true nature as the self, there's no one left to experience the consequences of actions. The whole structure of karma becomes irrelevant.
This is making my head spin a bit.
I know, right?
So we're not just puppets of fate.
Well, Ramana Maharshi was very clear. The destiny applies to the body, not the self. He encouraged people not to get caught up in trying to control their destiny, but to focus on realizing their true nature.
So it's about aligning with the self.
Right.
The source of all creation.
Yeah.
Rather than getting tangled up in the web of karma.
That's a great way to put it.
It's about recognizing that our true power lies in aligning with the self. Not in manipulating the world around us.
Like that.
Okay, so karma is about cause and effect.
Got it.
And destiny is about the predetermined path of the body.
Right.
What about free will?
Free will?
Does that even exist in this framework?
It's the ultimate question, isn't it?
It is.
Ramana Maharshi suggested that free will, as we typically conceive of it, is actually an illusion.
Okay.
He pointed out that our thoughts and actions are often driven by unconscious patterns and conditioning, not by conscious choice.
So it's like we're on autopilot most of the time.
Yeah, basically.
He used the analogy of a train that's already in motion.
Okay.
A train.
We might feel like we're choosing the direction.
Right.
But the tracks have already been laid.
But if we're not really making conscious choices,
what
about responsibility?
Right.
Do we still hold ourselves accountable for our actions?
This is important.
It is.
Ramana Maharshi didn't shy away from the importance of taking responsibility for our actions.
Okay.
He taught that even though our choices might be conditioned,
Right.
we still have the capacity to act ethically and compassionately.
So even if we're not fully in control,
Yeah,
we still have responsibility to align our choices with our values.
exactly. It's about recognizing that our actions have consequences,
Right.
both for ourselves and others,
Yeah.
and choosing to act in ways that create more harmony and less suffering.
I like that.
This Retire Deep Dive has been mind-blowing.
It has.
We've explored so much.
We have the ego, self-inquiry, meditation, mantras, the nature of reality, karma, destiny, and even free will.
Wow.
It feels like we've just scratched the surface
I know, right?
of Ramana Maharshi's teachings.
And that's the incredible thing.
It is.
There's always more to discover,
right?
to contemplate, to experience.
Yeah.
It's truly a lifelong journey.
It's like we've been given a glimpse of this vast, uncharted territory.
Yeah.
And we're just beginning to explore its depths.
What a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And the most exciting part
Yeah.
is that this territory lies within each of us.
So for our listener, we encourage you to continue this exploration on your own.
Yeah.
Delve deeper into Ramana Maharshi's teachings.
Okay.
Experiment with the practices and see where they lead you.
It's an adventure.
And remember, as we've been exploring today, the truth you're seeking might be closer than you think.
It might be right there.
It's not something to be found outside yourself,
Right.
but something to be realized within.
Beautiful.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning,
Yes.
and keep diving deep.